Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Prepared to Read. My name is Marcos, and I'm here with my good friend Jacob. And today we're going to be talking about Way of Kings, chapters 6 through 8. But first, we wanted to bring up our comment on our last video from Rosemary Allen, who said, I'm enjoying listening to your theories on everything. It sounds like you're enjoying the process, journey before destination indeed. So we just wanted to say thank you for your comment, Rosemary. It's nice to know somebody out there is listening. Hopefully on this one we can get some interaction from Brandon. I hear he's very active in the Reddit for Way of Kings, and maybe one day we'll hear from him.
Yeah.
But Jacob, what did you think?
I've actually sent
Oh,
him
really?
like 100 letters.
I've been to it. I went to his house.
Of these chapters?
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't like it for some reason. I don't know. He just keeps
saying something
he's going to call the cops.
But anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go for it.
No, but of these three chapters, I will say this is the first time in this book, and we're already, I think, over 100 pages in when we start these, that I felt a little bit of like all right, gotta push through. And I think that was more so on the Shallan chapters, which it seems like you felt the same way when you were
I think
reading
100
this.
pages is pretty good, though.
I think at that point,
I think 100 pages is pretty good, because most fantasy books,
yeah, no, I
feel
agree.
like that kind of happens a lot sooner. So,
well, yeah. So, like, all right, I'm just gonna get into it. So, what it feels like to me, or I think what I'm struggling with, isn't so much that what's on the page isn't intriguing, but the way it's been, I guess I'll say, edited, like in a movie, like the order of which things were shown has been kind of weird to me, because Kaladin is like, I feel is moving. Like there's a lot going on. Whereas Shallan really feels like that more stereotypical fantasy beginning where it's like, oh, I'm in this new place. And like her first three chapters were like, I'm on this boat. I get off the boat. The next one, I walk up this hill. I get to this place. And then the third one was like, well, I talked to this lady and she told me no.
that's a summary.
So it was like, I feel like that could, and well, yeah, but then they were split up in between Kaladin's chapters. So it's like these things are happening right after each other, but we have relatively big breaks from reading Kaladin's perspective. So it just feels like I've been here for a long time, and they pick up like right after. So I don't know if that's adding to the feeling of like, oh, come on, like kind of want to move forward. And I will say where Shallan's chapters have ended in this section, I feel like, okay, cool. Like we've hit the part of what's next. Like we've started her journey.
I agree. It feels like Kaladin's is the momentum.
So it's
and then on Shallan's, it's kind of like, all right, now I got to get through these, and then I can get back to Kaladin. Also, just
and I think that's a struggle of changing POVs. Like I experienced it in Wheel of Time too, where it would be like, all right, we're ramping up here, and then psych, we're gonna go over here and start from like, hey, super high energy about a hit, like a climax, and then we're gonna come down to, oh, and then I walked off the boat and looked around, like starting an arc, I guess you could say. And that change of energies can just kind of feel like, ooh, stop and then go.
Well, on top of that,
and then go. And it drags, in my opinion.
At least for me at this point, when I was reading this book the first time, Shallan just really wasn't working for me either. Like I already was invested in Kaladin's story and what was happening with him. But whenever it came to Shallan, it was just kind of like, all right, this is a much different pace. It's almost like reading a different style, which is fine because it fits more Shallan and who she is and where she's at. But I just found Kaladin's stuff way more interesting and fun to read. So, got any more initial comments?
And I think Well, yeah, just jumping off that real quick. I think Kaladin's moves too, because how we've talked about in the previous episodes, you get thrown into his situation. Like again, we still don't know what's happened, how he got to be a slave. He like we never figure that out, and then it's like, oh well, welcome to a war. Here you go, figure it out. And I think that really helps in the, oh man, we're just moving. We're
Well, we
along
also
for the ride,
experienced
and this ride is
Kaladin's
going. Where
kind of
she'll
downfall. Like we saw what happened to him for why we should feel for him, why we should care for him. But with Shallan, it's more, well, we found out that her family is kind of poor, but we don't really care. It was just a sentence. We didn't see the effects of that. We didn't see how it affected her. So there's really like no reason to truly care for her yet.
Mhm. Right. And then before you go on, I will say though, her last chapter is, like I said, turning around, I think. So I don't want this to all be
Shallan
negative.
just sucks here.
I
That's what you're
think
saying.
towards the end, one, she shows really good. She shows, yeah,
I
I
just
can't
skipped
stand
those
it. I'm just going to
pages.
rip the pages out of the book. We're not going to cover her chapters. Yeah. No, no. um, like, like I said, she's shown some characteristic traits that I'm like, oh, I'm on board for
Okay.
this now. So yeah, but
Well,
we can get into the
chapter
plot if you
6,
want.
Bridge 4. This is probably one of my favorite chapters so far of the book. I love this chapter. But to give a brief description about it, so Kaladin and the rest of the slave caravan. Oh, you got a comment? Why do I love
Why
it?
do you love it? Just tell me.
I think this chapter
Yeah.
is cinematic. I could just imagine this in my head. Like, yeah, when we
Okay.
get there, I'll bring it up again. But this chapter just to me writes itself from like a
Okay.
production point. So Kaladin and the slave caravan arrive at the Shattered Plains at the war camp of High
Yeah.
Prince
Okay. I get
Sadeas.
you.
And from there, they're taken to a woman who is to decide if they're slaves or not, they're going to keep them or what they're going to do with them. And the slaver keeps on dashing Kaladin's hopes, kind of putting him down. Kaladin's on this really big, I want to be a fighter again, a soldier. Like he wants to redeem himself, all that type of stuff. Anyways, Kaladin ends up getting bought, and him and his companions are made into members of bridge crews. And they're taken to their new supervisor named Gaz. And they instantly aren't getting along. And because of this, Kaladin is placed in a terrible place on what's called a bridge to go on a bridge run without any type of protection or shoes. And at this point, I like how this is done because, again, you're just thrown in there. We don't know what a bridge run really is. So the bridge crew, they go on this several hour walk to where they arrive at a chasm of the Parshendi enemy, and or not a chasm, but where the Parshendi are on the other side of the chasm. And they have to go through this whole volley of arrows, and a bunch of people are dying. Kaladin is the only survivor. And I believe he ends up just kind of like passing out from just fatigue from the whole process. And after that, he is wakened by the Windspren, who gives him a name, Syl, and he makes his way back to camp. So that's kind of a high picture overview of it. But what did you think about this chapter, Jacob?
So I I think at first I was it took me a while to come around on this chapter because I'm, like you said, we don't know what bridgemen are. And it's a like this concept I don't think is around in
Mm-hmm.
our world right now. So trying to wrap my head around what was being written on the page, like I had to reread a couple times. I'm like, wait, what are we doing? Like I thought at first I was like, oh, it's like a big bridge and they're gonna defend a bridge, and then it's like, no, they're putting the bridge on their heads, you know, and then they're
So
just
do you
running.
understand then the bridge run,
um, but
or you
yes,
think? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I figured it out. Yeah, like they are carrying a bridge because they're gonna have to get over something. But yeah, but at first I was like, are they? I thought what was gonna happen at first. It sounds stupid, but they were gonna put it on their head and people were gonna walk over them. So I was like, damn, they're literally just like a human bridge. But no, that's not what happened. Um, but I like this chapter. I don't think I like it as much as you. But it shows big contrast of who Kaladin was and where he was to what he is now. Like he is treated like dirt now, and he feels that way. Which again, like I really think his spren is like depression or despair or something. Um, and he's struggling to like he even says he's like that person I was in the
Yeah.
battlefield doesn't exist anymore, and that's a very powerful thing to read when you hear that. So I like it. I think it's a great contrast to where he was. Um, I don't think it was as cinematic as you do, so I would love to
Yeah.
hear why you
So
think
this
so.
chapter,
But
I didn't remember
so
the
pass.
specifics of the chapter, but whenever I think about Way of Kings, this is one of the things I think about is these whole bridge runs because I think they're awesome. For one, the bridgemen, I agree, they're treated like dirt. I would argue you're treated as even less than a slave. Like your purpose is to die. You have no purpose, and we do not.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care about them whatsoever. They're literally told to pick up a bridge, run into fire, to put it down so that the army can cross over. And they're put straight in front of everybody with like no protection, no nothing. And the Parshendi know this. That's a gun they're shooting arrows at them because they're like, these guys are going to run to put down this bridge, so we need to kill them so that way the army can't cross over. So I just think there's kind of initiative on both sides. Like the army of the Alethi are trying to cross over, the Parshendi are trying to stop them, and then you have these people carrying their bridge just like running into the line of fire. So I don't know. To me, I think that could be done so well on like a show or a movie because it's just this action scene of them running this bridge across. People are
Mm-hmm.
like dying back and forth. It reminds me a lot of just like in war movies, those scenes where like they're running into enemy fire and they're trying just not to get killed. Except what sucks for the bridgemen is there is, yeah,
Yeah, like the
what
fog
sucks
of
for the
war.
bridgemen is there's no stopping, there's no hiding. Like there is just run as fast as you can to get this bridge down. And I like how it's done because in the beginning, before they start the bridge run, Kaladin I think was in the back, and he was like, "This bridge is heavy as hell. Like this is getting real heavy," because they had to carry it for hours. And then right before the bridge run starts, they're like, "Oh, Kaladin, go up in front." And he's like, why are they putting me in like one of the best spots? And it was because like, bro, these are the people I get. Yeah, like these
Yeah, like I
people
can
get
see
killed like
now.
immediately. And while they're running, I love like his description of how he's like, I didn't even see the person's face that was next to me. Like I knew he was there, but we started the run and he was just gone.
Yeah,
And then the other guy next to him is like praying, like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna die. And I don't know. I just think this scene could be done awesome with like a really good director. And yeah, it builds. I think this one adds the despair
I think.
of like
Oh, sorry.
he is in a sucky situation. Like this isn't just oh you're a slave now. This is you can die any second, and you have to do this day in and day out, and that's terrible. So
Yeah, and I think it's driven home when he's telling himself on the way there, like, well, if I get a spear, like if I can fight, I can find I can find purpose
yeah.
because I fight.
And
And
he
they're
even
like, no, you're not
says,
gonna fight.
he said,
Like,
I have never
we won't even give
felt,
you
I don't
that.
remember the exact word, but he says, like, I never felt fear in this way because when I had my spear, I had my shield, I had some type of control. I knew I could go out there, I could fight, I could defend myself. But where I am now,
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing. Like, I am completely exposed. And yeah, he says, like, this is one of the first times I've truly felt fear for what I'm doing. And yeah, go for it.
Can I read you the quote? Never before had he felt so powerless in battle. He'd charge any fortifications, he'd run beneath waves of arrows, but he had always felt a measure of control. He'd had his spear, he'd had his shield, he could fight back. Not this time. The bridge crews were like hogs running to slaughter. Yep, crazy stuff. But he makes it. Okay, hold on. I think the audio is being weird. Can you hear me? I can't
Oh,
hear
I'm
you right
muted.
now.
Sorry. Okay. We'll correct it in
What'd you
post.
say?
But yeah, so this chapter for me,
Yeah, do
sure,
you want to take the time?
just text it to me. Okay.
No, go talk. I'll text it to you.
So this chapter for me is awesome also because I feel like it is the start. Like this is the beginning of the more immediate story that's going to like kind of carry over. So things that happen here, characters, motives are really establishing stuff. And yeah, so besides the immediate bridge thing, there is other stuff around this. Um, I think one of the most important things to talk about would be Gaz. The whole thing that like this is his immediate superior, and Gaz and Kaladin don't get along. And because of that, Kaladin kind of gets crap,
Yeah.
even worse circumstances. And I think that's something that I would assume is going to carry on, you know? So Kaladin can't get along with Gaz. It's like if you can't get along with your boss at work,
Yeah, definitely.
it's going to have some impact. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Tell me about it. Yeah, Gaz is a real dick, man. He's just one of those guys that's like I think Kaladin puts it a great way where he's like he's so he feels so bad about himself. The only way he feels good is that he does have the
Yeah.
authority to belittle
He's
others.
very mid
Like
level
that's it.
management.
That's all he has. He has nothing else.
Yeah. That's what
Yeah.
he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But,
Hate those guys.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I really have to say. I feel like this is an action chapter.
Okay,
Go
I
for it.
do have a question. It is, but I do have a question too, and I'm gonna ask them to you. But if you know the answer, please don't tell me. But there's just stuff that I'm thinking about. Why did the lady who bought him? Why did she want him to receive special treatment? Because of his branding, or his branding, I guess the mark that he has about being a deserter. Uh, like why
I
I
thought
don't
it
I
was
don't
because he was a specimen.
understand necessarily. Like I thought that for a second. Yeah, but like why would you want to go kill one? Because that's where she
Yeah.
sent him to go die. Like honestly, the first vibe I got was she was gonna buy this dude and like sex slaves type stuff. But then
Is that
I
kind of
don't think
right?
Brandon Sanderson. I don't know. I might be wrong, but he doesn't. What I know about him, yeah, like I don't think it's gonna take those turns necessarily. Or if anything, it might just be implied. But that's what I thought it was gonna go to because she's like, take off your shirt, and I was like,
Brandon.
whoa, this is getting. Anyways, yeah, ooh. uh, and then the second thing is like obviously this spren that's following him, which we've known for a while, isn't a normal spren. And why does it have
Well,
a
she's
name?
even surprised. She's
Yeah,
like, I have a
that's
name.
the biggest thing. Yeah. Reminds
Yeah.
me of
Well,
Tinkerbell
we
a little
do
bit.
know she said
Yeah,
she's a
yeah,
Winspren.
and think even when he asked her,
You don't buy it?
I
Okay.
don't think she is. I really don't. I don't buy it. No, because I think we have, and I think it's on purpose. We have seen spread all over the place. And every time he takes the time, Brandon, to tell us this is what they do, this is the
Mm-hmm.
rules they follow. Every time. This is the only one that doesn't follow the rules. So I don't really think it's a wind sprint. Like I'm telling you, I think it might be because we find out later there's creation sprint and logic sprint. So why wouldn't there be a depression one? I'm standing
Yeah.
on that. I stand on that.
Well, her name's Syl,
But yeah, it's curious
And
that she has a
yeah, we
name
get
though.
that whole part where she's like,
Mm-hmm.
I have a name. I don't know what, I think she says, like, I don't know why I have a name. I didn't even remember I had a name, but she knows that she does. So to me, it's almost like she's becoming more conscious.
Yeah, and her
Yeah.
mm-hmm. As she talks to Kaladin, and here's a good thing. Kaladin was jealous that she was like circling around Gaz.
Do you think it's because of
Weird,
like her freedom type of a thing?
I think. But I don't know. He just thought like why like he felt a little bit of jealousy when she kept like
Hmm.
being curious about Gaz, which is like I guess he's just grown attached, you know. But just interesting. But her full name is Sylphrena, which I've highlighted because
Did
I'm
you
pretty
hate
sure
that
it's going
name?
to come up. There is another thing I want to pull out that I highlighted. No, it's not bad. There's other names that I hate in this section, and I'll tell you. Um, I highlighted them. But there is something, there's two things that I highlighted that I wanted to talk about. Okay, this is one of them. I'm just going to read the quote and then I can talk about it. Kaladin longed to lie there, staring at the sky, oblivious of the world. His training, however, warned that might cause him to cramp up. That would make the return trip even worse. That training, it belonged to another man from another time, almost from the Shadow Days.
Hmm.
Shadow Days isn't capitalized, so I don't really know, but it feels like it should be. Like
Hmm.
what are Shadow Days? Was he there, or is he just saying like, oh, it's like is it like a saying like
Back
you
in
know
Nam.
back in the old times, like just a general statement? But it caught my attention. Yeah, exactly. Back in '68, and then we get another name drop of I'm guessing someone Kaladin lost because he loses everybody of
Oh, I
Laurel,
think it's
Laral,
Laurel. I think it's just pronounced like
Laurel,
Laurel. Laurel?
Laurel, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, he says he was talking about the prince,
Bright Lord?
brightness, whatever they call them, that was like gonna buy them. Yeah, and well, I guess not Bright
Oh,
Lord because it's the girl, and
brightness.
this place sounds
Yeah, the one
sexist.
that was trying to buy her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one that bought him. Um, Yeah, he's talking about her and said that she looked much as Laurel had at the end. Who's that? At the end of what? Her death? That isn't like that's curious because
Yeah.
it's like
He's been referring
I
to
don't know,
several
whatever.
people that
But yeah,
it seems like were part of his past, but
a
he
lot of
hasn't given
people.
any context to them.
I will say so something we talked about last episode where I was like, he's 19 years old and he doesn't. He sounds like he's lived like this is like a 60-year-old man talk. With
He's a
the
war vet,
past,
man. This
oh
guy's
these
been through
people.
stuff.
Um, but I was, yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. But I was informed on Reddit when I put my little thoughts and theories out there that a year in Roshar isn't the
Hmm.
same as a year here. I don't know where people find that out, but they just told me, hey, it's not really a spoiler, but to give you context in what a year means, which I think they ended up saying it's like 1.75 Earth years
Okay.
for these
So he's
years.
really like 40.
So he's lived a little bit longer. He's
Yeah.
probably closer to like 30. Yeah, something like that. Um, so which makes sense then, that's a longer time, I guess. But that's all I
Okay.
got.
All right. So jumping into chapter 7, anything reasonable. First, before I get into the plot summary for this one, I really like the little quote. So this one says, "They are a flame, they burn, they bring the darkness when they come. And so all you can see is that their skin is a flame, burn, burn, burn." What do you think about that?
Hmm. I don't know. I'm guessing. I'm guessing these are all referring to the last desolation that we talked about last chapter that was brought up in one of these death rattles. So again, I think these are visions of a apocalyptic event of the end times. Like I said, I think a lot of this book is very inspired by religious stuff, and it reminds me of like Revelations. Like I feel like when you read these things, it's like talking about. It reminds me of the book of Revelations, even though I've never read it.
Because this
But at
one,
the end times, and I just think it's that. Again, I are they
are they
injecting?
injecting?
Hmm? Yeah, like okay, so why are these people subjects? Like that's what I want to know. Is it some sickness that's going around that we don't know about yet? Are they testing something somewhere that we don't know and injecting people with stuff that causes these crazy visions? You
Because
know,
yeah,
I don't know.
the way that they're kept is very like lab notebook. You know, you're writing what they said, a description of them, the date, the time. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very systematically logged. This one in particular, though,
Yeah, it's
go ahead.
not like oh sorry, it's not like they're like collected from a bunch of different sources. Like you can tell this is one person taking it the
Yeah.
same
Or
way
maybe like a very
every time.
established group uh, taking them in a specific way. But this one, I think, this
Los
one, I think they're
Alamos.
talking about the Parshendi because it says you can see, all you can see is that their skin is aflame. And we've talked about how the Parshendi look. And well, in my head, I picture how they look like Darth Maul because they have like red marbled skin. So here, I think they're talking about the Parshendi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Really, I can see that. I think that's a
yeah.
good thought.
Anyway, so jumping into the actual chapter. Chapter 7, anything reasonable. So in this chapter, Shallan is on her way to the Palanaeum, however you say that word, to convince Jasna that she is worthy to be her ward. So we got a trooper she doesn't give up. She believes that it's critical that she finds a way to do so because her family is falling apart. They're poor, and from Game of Thrones, we know what happens when a house is weak; they get taken out. So, because of that, she wants to steal this soulcaster from Yasna, so that way she's able to kind of use it to bring about wealth again, to make her family prosper. So she has to wait for Yasna in her reading alcove because she's denied access to the actual Palanaeum. I can't say that word. And while she waits, she starts to sketch several memories. And then she writes a letter to Yasna containing arguments for her reconsideration. She's interrupted by an Ardent named Kopsel, and who asks her to wait for Yasna and praises her about her sketches. So she's a good drawer. From there, Capsule tells Shallan that he is trying to convert Yasna, who is an atheist, because we've heard that she has her issues with religion, to Vorinism. So there's kind of the connection to religion that you've been talking about. Then he leaves and he asks her to let Yasna know that he had come by to speak with her. She agrees, but she just continues her drawings, and she's there for quite a while and begins to collect her things, leaving the letter that she had wrote for Yasna. But before she can leave, Yasna shows up and she looks displeased. I think we could kind of tie this in with the next chapter because they kind of go hand in hand. So that's where chapter 7 ends, but
Yeah, if you
chapter
want.
8 picks up from there, where Yasna pretty much scolds Shallan, saying that she's already made her decision. Shallan's embarrassed and disturbed because Yasna again leaves. But Yasna calls her back and apologizes to her and gives her Shallan's money pouch that she had left behind. So Shallan asks Yasna to read the letter that she had written from her for her resume. And Yasna is impressed that she has kind of learned a bunch of these skills, and she accepts Shallan as her ward, um, or she agrees to accept Shallan as her ward once she learns about philosophy and history. Shallan's very happy, but she starts to worry that this kind of isn't going to happen fast enough because she needs to get back to her house. Her house is falling apart. They got bills to pay, and she needs to kind of hurry. So from there, Shallan leaves from the area where they were discussing, and she meets up with Yalb, who is one of the guards. And Yalb insists that Shallan is pretty talented and that she would be accepted if she's just more persistent. So he's kind of giving her the inside on how to get onto Yasna's good side. So from there, she starts to study. She's planning to impress Yasna. And just before Yasna leaves Kharbranth, she is planning to kind of learn all of this before that happens. Yeah, from there, Yasna asks to see Shallan's satchel, where she comes across a bunch of Shallan's sketches with notes about biology. And she kind of asks her, like, why do you do this? And Shallan just says, I just like to draw. It's just what I like to. I like to do. And she notices that Shallan kind of pursues scholarly type activities in her free time and is persistent. So because of that, Yasna accepts her. And yeah, that's kind of what happens in these chapters. She tries to talk to Yasna, and Yasna acknowledges that she's kind of scholarly and persistent, and she accepts her to be the ward. So I said a lot of words to sum that
I
up.
think,
But that's pretty much what happens in these chapters. Thoughts?
yeah, I think chapter 7 is the chapter that really bogged me down. And I think really what it was the drawing scene. Again, like I think I'm going to be a lot more critical. I don't know why I did that hand motion. I'm going to be a lot more critical of the chapters here because that's just what I experienced reading it. Was like kind of like, man, I'm struggling to get through this. Anyways, the drawing scene, I feel like it took a long time. Like, yeah, I get it. Like she drew, and I don't want to bash on it because I think I don't know. I get it's her personality trait, so it's important to know these things, and it's almost how she processes. And like she said, like she clears her mind. She drew, she cleared her mind, and she determined her next steps, which was writing the note. So I think that's very good to see the process of how she thinks. I just think we sat through 3 drawings, and I was kind of like, okay, like I'm ready to move on. But we moved on eventually. I'm gonna let me think about how I want to attack this because the thoughts tie into both.
I think we could just clump them together. I think it's like one scene almost.
Yeah. Because there are some things that I pull up that I see.
One comment I would throw.
Let me think about it real quick. I'm sorry.
I think the whole drawing thing for Shallan, well, it's maybe in this chapter wasn't really done in the most intriguing way. I think it is unique characterization. Like I think Brandon's doing a good job at like establishing these characters in your imagination. Like I can picture Shallan, kind of get a vibe for like what her personality is, and I know she likes drawing. Like I can describe this character in a couple, I think like 3 chapters we've had so far up to this point, 4. I can already describe kind of what she is, what she likes. Like if she was here with me, what would she be doing? She'd probably be sitting down, drawing, and making some weird sarcastic jokes that
yeah
are kind of funny. Maybe if I heard them in person, they would be a bit more funny. But also the audiobook, that's one thing that I think an audiobook to a physical book would be different, is the way the jokes land. Because they're kind of at the mercy of the way that the reader, the way that they're said. And I don't know. Maybe I'm going to start to find her jokes funny because they're not funny.
Were they? Where did they land ever?
I can't remember a time where I was like, oh, Shallan, you're just so funny. Like, then again, it's really... yeah.
You crack me up, man. You get me.
At the same time, it's rare that... I don't know. Maybe I just don't understand book humor. Because there is characters in other books I've read that are supposed to be like the comedic character. And I don't know, they just humor in a book is very
Mm-hmm.
different.
Well, the one character that sticks out to me that made me laugh, and I'm gonna forget his name, but the kid
Uh,
from It.
Eddie, was it Eddie?
Um, you know
I
what
think it
I'm
was
talking
Eddie.
about?
No.
No, not
Hmm.
Eddie. No, Eddie was the sheltered one. So I think I agree with you about her characterization as really evident in these early chapters. And I will say, so like I feel like we've harped on her a lot, right? Like maybe not as intrigued. And I don't think it's not intrigued with her, and not that we don't find her jokes funny, but I don't think she's been given a lot to do yet.
She doesn't have a
But
lot of work
I
with
will
the
say
materials light.
she is a character. Yeah, it's
Now I
not her
see what
fault.
you
Come
mean
on,
about the
guys.
delay.
Put her in a good situation. She can do it. Oh, okay. You get it? Yeah. Okay. Um, but yeah, it'll be curious to listen back to see how that sounds. She isn't, I think, in today's standards, like if we were to apply her to Earth 2024, not a cool person, man. She is very stuck in these traditional beliefs and not cool. Like she judges people hardcore, like super hardcore if they're not aligned with what her teachings are. And then we find out like her teachings are like rural, traditional, like even the priest that she meets, which I think is a priest, the Ardent, he's like, yo, like tone it down. Like you're a little much, you know? Um, but but what I loved to see was in chapter 8 when she's at the bookstore and the guy kind of gives her some disrespect of like, oh, you're a girl, like just read some romance novels. I don't think she was funny, but she tore into that guy in a way that I was like, okay, like I don't think any of her jokes have landed for me before, but this is like, okay, she can be ruthless in a verbal sense, you know? She picked him apart and I was about it. I was like, okay, I am on board with this. Like I can ride with a character. And she says like my dad had an anger and her family has a reputation of it, and she's like, well, I continue this. So I think I'm like in, okay, if that's a struggle,
Yeah.
like I want to see that. I want to see that if she does find it hard to like, hey, I've had a rough day, like am I going to lash out? And it worked in her favor this time, but it's like I would love to see times where it doesn't
And to kind of
work in her favor.
echo your
But
comment,
that's on
I
character.
I agree with you. We've been kind of ripping on Shallan quite a bit, and I do like her. I think just the way
Yeah.
that the book is edited, where it's cutting between like this very action depressed boy story, and then it's cutting to her, which is just paced very different. I don't think it does her any justice. If I were to take out Kaladin's parts and just read Shallan's parts, maybe it would feel a bit better seeing her come into her own. But I think it's just the contrast between the two stories that's like, Shallan's stuff is so much slower than Kaladin's stuff. So it's like if you were watching this in a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like what you're saying,
Sorry,
finish your thought.
audience. For some reason, we're having audio problems today, so it's making things
Yeah.
difficult to like bounce off each other. What I was gonna say, really quick, was
Yeah. It's all right.
it's like if you're watching a war movie and they're like in the middle of the battle, and then it just cuts to like this person in a waiting room that's like just waiting, and they're drawing and kind of having her thoughts. It just doesn't match up the best, I think. So
No. And like I said, it's not the only time I've experienced this problem. Like Wheel of Time, I really felt it. I can't remember if I felt it in Game of Thrones as much. But yeah, there's just how do you do it? Do you finish an arc? Because I think, like you said, if this was page 60 where we're getting this from Shallan's story, cool. Like I don't feel like it's slow, you know? But it's page 150 and I'm like, okay, we haven't really started her story. I feel like we're still in the intro. Um so, I don't think it's a character issue. Like I don't think I dislike Shallan, like you said. I think it's just bouncing back and forth has not worked in her favor. But like I said, I see promise. I see the light at the end of the tunnel where I'm like, okay, I'm hooked on where she's at now. I like this. I like what I've seen from her personality now. As far as like she thinks she's going to struggle with her anger. There was something I highlighted, and I won't be able to remember what chapter it was in. But she like okay, and then I'll bounce off something else too. But she talks about a memory attacking her where she had a silver sword in her hand and she called it an incident. And now I'm like, first thing that I thought was like, did she kill her dad? I don't know. Um, oh yeah, memories attacked her. Non-Balat bruised, his coat torn, a long silvery sword in her hand, sharp enough to cut stones as if they were water. Like just out of nowhere, you get hit with that, and it's almost like if I were in a movie, it would be one of those things where it's just boom, flash on the screen, gone, and you're like, whoa, what the hell did I just see? And then moving forward, every time she brings up memory, it's capitalized. Memory isn't a proper noun in our world, but it is in hers. Why? Very interesting. And then you start learning about her collect, like this is where like okay, this is interesting. She collects people in her
That's kind of
drawings.
serial
That
killer
sounds weird
vibes
to
to
me.
me.
That's creepy in my opinion. Yeah, it is. It really is. And like it's a little bit exaggerative, but and she does the thing where I guess she blinks her eyes to like
Yeah.
almost like if she's
I
taking
mean,
a
if
picture
you walk around
and then
taking
collects
pictures of
them in
people to
capital
collect,
memories.
that's kind of weird.
So yeah, don't call it collect, just say I'm a photographer or I'm an artist, but don't say I've collected Yasna. Like, it's just weird. And I wonder like so again, I don't think anything that's being put in front of us is here for no reason. So I think the capital M's are important. And then I think her drawing them is important. And I think her saying that she's collecting them when she does this process is important. And I wonder, so we've learned, here we go, I'm going full off. We've learned that soul casting is about creating things. We found out that her father was creating marble stuff. It's, like marble quarries so that he could continue his wealth, which was technically illegal, and he did it with an illegal soul caster. That's why she needs it to continue doing what he was doing. And what I'm going to be curious about is like, is she going to be able to create things from her drawings if she gets a hold of this soul caster? And then also going back to what we talked about last episode when Yasna made the stone go away. Originally, I was like, hey, where did the stone go? But I think what I found out in this chapter is the stone didn't go anywhere. She transformed it into smoke. And that's where I'll bring up a really bad name. I'm going to read the quote. For a few extended moments, Shallan was back in that hallway again, watching something that should not be. A heretic wielding one of the most sacred powers in all the world, the power of change itself, the power by which the Almighty had created Roshar. He had another name, allowed to pass only the lips of ardents. Elithanathaniel, he who transforms. Awful name. Awful name. Elitha Anathaliel. Come on. How am I supposed to read that? I can't. I
That's one
can't
of
read
those
that.
ones you just
Like
you
I
just let
need
it
I
happen.
need him I hope. Yeah, it like, and when you're reading in your head, it's just like, blah, 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 and you move on. You know what I mean? Like, you see that I don't process the sound in my head, and I continue. But like, but still, okay. Bad name aside. Okay, well, first he needs a pronunciation index in the back of his books, because if he's gonna put names like it in this, like I said, it takes me out when I'm reading and I can't pronounce a name. I struggle too much on it. It slows down the process. And I know some people just accept it
Me
and
too.
move on, like my sister does, but I don't like it. But he who transforms. So we learn that soul casting is about changing things and creating things. So like when he's creating the marble quarries, is he turning certain things into a quarry? I don't necessarily know if he's creating them from thin air, but just curious. Just my thoughts. Capital M memories.
Well,
Interesting things going
I don't
on.
really have much to say on these besides just what we talked about with Shallan's characterization. Everything else kind of just happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think Yasna, I mean, they're establishing her a bit more, but right now she's kind of just like a one trait character. She's just kind of like that sassy, I don't know, mentor type. Uh, so yeah, I think it seems like Shallan's starting
I think,
now a little bit. It just started in a much different way than Kaladin. So
yeah, I agree. I will say, I, it sounds obvious, but I know there's more to Yasna. And I think the way this is going to go is like, okay, it sounds like, I don't think I've gotten explicit rules or confirmation of this yet, but that Vorin worship believes that the power to soul cast is gifted through the Almighty, He who transforms. That's what it sounds like, because Shallan is saying like this shouldn't be happening. A heretic shouldn't be able to do this, but Yasna can. So then that proves that this religion, or like if that's true, right, that that's the belief, then it proves that this religion is already wrong in certain things. And I really, really think Shallan's journey is going to be realizing that this religion she's been brought up in an extremely traditional mindset, like gets broken. Like she is going to be disillusioned of this. And again, I've hit on it before, but I think that's why Yasna was really curious about her studying philosophy and history, because through that she's going to find out, whoa, what I've been taught is not the case. And maybe Shallan ends up becoming a heretic as well, which is what I think happened to Yasna. I think Yasna found out some stuff and was like, this ain't right with me. I think then and quit. And I think that's how it's going to
okay,
go. That's my thoughts so far.
all right.
Oh, and then so you had asked me last week to bring up any quotes that I liked or didn't like. There was some good nuggets in here. I want to say I have two. I don't know if I'll be able to find the second one, but I'll read the first one. It's just a quote. One cannot apply logic as an absolute where human beings are concerned. Great line. Great line. I think I hear it all the time, especially from, I think, people in my circle. And no shade to anybody, but because like I know a lot of engineers and science driven people, where they're like, well, like this is the logical decision. And it's like, like, and like a lot of times I think I agree, uh, just being honest with them. But it's like, yeah, I mean, like if you're only thinking about logic, that's only a percentage of what human beings are. Emotion plays a big part in us. We're not just animals. So yeah, if you are only thinking about things logically, you're thinking about things wrong. You know, not saying that it's not a good thing to do to take the logical decision, but so yeah, that quote stuck out with me. That was a good job. But yeah, overall, not my favorite set of chapters, but light at the end of the tunnel. It seems like things are turning around with the Shallan, and I'm excited to see what happens next to her, which I think is good.
Cool. Well, I don't have
But
anything
that's all
else
I
to
got.
add. So thank you guys if you're still listening. Sorry about some of the awkwardness in this one. We'll try to get that worked out for next
Yeah.
episode because it is kind of hard to bounce off each other when there's a delay, especially when you make jokes and they just sit there and stare at you for like, and then I was thinking like, oh, maybe he's just like, it just didn't land. And then he was thinking, oh, I'm just going to laugh to make it like more
Yeah.
interactive, but oh, well. Okay. And yeah, so in this next,
Well, I think that's funny. I'm sorry. I think it's funny that you didn't realize there a delay because then that's what you were thinking. Because I think I realized super early on that there was. So it's like, okay, like I'm trying to work through it. But the fact that you're thinking like maybe he just didn't think what I said was
yeah.
funny is even funnier.
Anyway, so
Oh, that's great.
next next episode, I think we'll go ahead and finish out the last 3 episodes or 3 chapters of part 1, and yeah, we'll give our thoughts on those. But if you're still listening, thank you. This is our 3rd episode, so we're still kind of figuring things out as we go. But yeah, I'll see you on the next one.